Welcome to the Athlete Brand Advisor Podcast, featuring interviews and news about NIL. We also have special episodes to talk about recent news, events, and anything in the world of sports. The podcast is brought to you by Pliable, a full-service marketing company, an NIL agency that educates and empowers athletes to build their athlete brand. Now, here's your host, Glynn.
Thanks and welcome to the Athlete Brand Advisor Podcast. In this episode, we're talking about NIL. We're talking about contracts, negotiating, and networking. And we're joined by my good friend today, Johnnie Perkins, who's going to tell us all about the world of NIL and why he is, as I like to say, all in. And he was a former student of sports management worldwide. He took the NIL course. Now he is a specialist in NIL compliance, athlete services, and a strategist when it comes to NIL. He is a mover and a shaker, and he's got a huge network to prove it. Johnnie, welcome in.
Hello, Greg. How are we doing today?
Excellent. I'm glad to be able to connect with you. You were such a great student for sports management worldwide, and now you have really embraced the NIL space, and you are doing some amazing things. And I think you're an amazing person to talk to for people that are trying to think about, well, what could I do in the NIL space? What could I, work with athletes? Could I work on contracts? Could I be an agent? Could I start an agency? Do I get involved in the educational side? And you've really tapped into a lot of different people to kind of figure out what you want to do. But I want to start with your background, because I think that's such an important piece of why you're so passionate about what you want to do in the NIL space. So hit us with it as to where you started your career and how you ended up here.
Well, I have to tell you, college sports has entered the golden era. When you look at the Final Four in the college football playoff, Indiana, Ole Miss, two of the four. Indiana is a basketball school, and Ole Miss hasn't really had that tradition. So ratings are up, excitement is booming, campuses are alive, and it's not just football. Look at women's basketball and softball, and the list goes on with all the different sports. For me, I am just passionate about sports in general, particularly college sports. And I have been a coach. I am a baseball umpire and football referee. My background is in strategic operations in the public and private sector, where I manage budgets from $100 million to $1.4 billion. I've been involved in compliance and regulatory compliance, and there's a difference. Compliance deals with what I call internal information or policies, and regulatory compliance deals with what I call external rules and regulations. I have deep experience in contract negotiations and contract development and implementation. I used to work for a union, and when I was in the public sector, as I continue my work there, I've served on both the labor and management side. So I know how to write a contract and how to negotiate a contract. In fact, I negotiated a $1.4 billion first ever project labor agreement in a municipality that created thousands of jobs. So proud of that. Relationship management. I never lost a line of business when I'm out negotiating contracts or growing business. And that's really important to return on investments. I have a financial management background in auditing and running big, large budgets, and also have a background in advocacy with people, student athletes. I created a program at the YMCA that not only was sports related, but involved student athletes who were getting into high school and college and kind of developing their skills and helping advocate for them as they move forward, not only on the sports side, but the academic side. And I look at what people have done. Darren Heitner, who writes a newsletter that I read weekly called Newsletter Image and Likeness. And Darren was recently talking about Damon Williams, the Damon Williams case, University of Washington. And what I love from a contract negotiator standpoint is how it was done with no yelling, no one raising their voices, no going to court. People sat down, were calm, and got it done. And that's how you negotiate contract negotiations. And I have that background. And those backgrounds and skill sets, I believe, are unique to someone like me who's served in both the public and private sector.
the relationships now between an athlete, their coach, the athletic department, and even their teammates, etc. Now with everything with NIL, it really is more important than ever.
It really is, and what's also important, there's that relationship is key. It's important to maintain connections to build those relationships. I often said if you don't have someone's cell phone number, you really don't have a key relationship in business in terms of making progress. But that student athlete and student athlete family relationship is really important because they've got to know three things. One, they have to know that NIL rules in high school, NCAA, NAIA, and junior college, they're not one size fits all. Uh, for example, in baseball and football, we have a rule book, and we follow those rules, and we adhere to those rules. There are different rules at different levels that student athletes in that relationship development need to understand. Number two, you've got to understand state law and school policy. Every state has different NIL laws. Everyone is different. There's different rule books, if you will, in each state. And you don't want to compromise a student athlete's eligibility. So you got to understand those. And some state high school associations approve of NIL deals and some don't. And so you have to understand what those look like. And then lastly, I want to say there's so many NIL opportunities. NIL is an ecosystem. It's at every level. There's been a lot of discussion about the transfer portal and the big seven-figure, five-star quarterbacks that are getting these deals. I have to tell you, there are opportunities at every level. There are legal ways to profit. When you look at the median deal today for a student athlete in NIL, it's $60. The average NIL deal per deal value is about $6,000. The median athlete earnings isn't $1 million, it's $1,000. And the average total athlete earnings is $30K, not $1 million. So I point all this out because that relationship that a university, a college, an institution, a coach, boosters, collectives, whoever has with a student athlete and their families, you always have to include the families. That relationship is so important because you want to maintain that communication, that contact. The last thing you want is someone transferring out of your school because you weren't answering a question about a class, a professor, how to study, can I get extra help? Someone has to be available to the student athlete and their families as well to answer those questions.
One of the big things when it comes to some of the other things we've talked about with contracts and negotiation is trust. There has to be a level of trust. And I think that that's one thing that these schools are starting to realize is the value of someone's word of, hey, if you come here, this is going to happen. Hey, this is our culture here. And they don't veer from it because if you start to veer from it, you start to lose trust. And talk to me about what trust means to you and some of the things we've talked about with contract negotiations. It matters. It's one of the fundamental principles of a good relationship.
My father used to say, God bless him, your word is your bond. He said, son, if I can teach you anything, when you give your word, never break it. I think that's what trust means. When you're in contract negotiations, when you're running an organization, when you're building relationships, when you're an advocate, you have to build trust. When you tell someone you're going to follow up by the end of the day, you need to follow up by the end of the day, either with the answer or say, hey, I need to get back to you again. How many times does no one follow up? That's not trust. I negotiated a contract with a firefighters union. They had not had a contract in 4 years. The trust broke down. I brought them into a room and said, gentlemen, we'll have this negotiated in 60 days. And guess what? We had a contract in 60 days, a 5-year new contract for them. That's trust. That's credibility. That's managing a relationship. And being the person you are, your word is your bond. And when you tell someone something, you have to make sure you follow through. Student athletes and families are no different. And there's too many being taken advantage of because of their skill set and their talent. Just be honest and talk from your heart when you're communicating with a student athlete and their family.
So they enter the world of NIL. They see all these shiny objects. They see, the millions that the quarterbacks, as you said, are making. But then you get on some of these platforms and you realize that wait a second, this isn't what I've been hearing about. This is $100 deal, and then sometimes they're applying, they might not hear back, or they don't have a personal relationship. And that's one of the reasons why I enjoy representing athletes, is because I'm there to advocate for them and find that person that is going to be behind that platform or behind that deal and say, hey, what can we do to see if this person is a good fit? And many times I'm reaching out on LinkedIn, trying to find that brand contact, whether it's going to be a marketing manager, a community marketing manager, anybody that is going to be touching what I think could be athlete relations or influencer marketing. And that's how you have to do it. You got to build those relationships. I know you're a big LinkedIn guy. Talk to me about what you've done with your LinkedIn.
I have built relationships with NIL parties in that name, image, likeness, and college sports world. And I built it with athletic directors, compliance officers, regulatory directors, coaches, and student athletes. And I've been asking a lot of questions about what's working, what's not working, where should we be going, who should we be talking to, but just being honest and building out that network and keeping up with information. Every morning I have a routine I do, and one of those is spending 2 hours. Sometimes I don't get into it every day, the 2 hours, but that's the goal. There are so many resources in NIL, and I read everything. Christy Dosh is one. I think she's the NIL foremost expert. I'm right now reading her book, The Athlete's NIL Playbook. Former ESPN reporter, attorney, professor at University of Florida. She knows her stuff, writes for Forbes magazine. Sports Management Worldwide, Teamwork Online, Open Doors, the D1 Ticker, NIL Wire, NIL Newsstand, Daily On 3, Optimum Sports Council, athletes.org, and I want to come back and talk about them shortly. This new one I picked up called NIL Sideline Report by Max Rusenkoff. Brilliant piece of writing by RevU, someone I would recommend for everyone. And then I love Darren Heitner, his new letter, Image and Likeness, and Braley Keller of NIL Blitz. There is so much to gain. Information changes, if not daily, hourly, by the minute. We say in the college football or football referee world, we referee every play, every minute, every down, every quarter, every half. These resources, you have to review all of them because there's so much information out there and it changes daily about what's going on. And it's important to keep up with what the NCAA is doing, what the College Sports Commission's doing through NIL Go. And I just keep continuing to learn and educate myself to be better informed so I can support student athletes and their families.
That also brings us to athletes.org. So they are the Players Association for college sports. They've tried to really take a strong hold, and they've been able to recruit several thousands of athletes to join their organization, which is so important, Johnny, because as somebody who's in contract negotiations, you know that if you have support, you can get stuff done. And I think what they've done to try to get the voice of the college athlete out there by having real athletes who are in this world, that's a huge leg up for them. And obviously, they're working on a pretty extensive collective bargaining agreement that would be really beneficial in many different ways for college athletes.
There's so much to say about collective bargaining. And what I will say is this. First of all, the work by athletes.org and the document they put together, terrific work. I've read it a couple times. I like to read things a few times to really, not just to read it, but to really absorb it and understand it. I always say, listen here to understand, and you have to do that. So love what they're putting together. Our approach in contract negotiations was always the word no doesn't exist, and we don't know the definition of maybe. There's always a way to get something done. I used to love when people would say, Perkins, you guys can't get that contract done. Well, let me show you. I have people come in at 3 o'clock and I'd say, hey, guess what? No one's going home for dinner unless we have a contract negotiated. And guess what? We get the contract negotiated. I've already mentioned the project labor agreement, San Diego, the firefighters contract we negotiated. But there's a challenge with this. There's different labor laws in every state. 1, 2, there's right to work states. And three, there's a little entity called the National Labor Relations Board that you have to have conversations with. Now, I'm a big guy on challenges. I love them. I love when someone says, "Hey, you can't do it." I love that. Oh, you can never do that. Never going to work. You can't win that contract. Well, okay, watch us. We're gonna do it. I think there's a way to do it. It's just going to take some. It's a heavy lift, but building those relationships, bringing in people that have contract negotiations development experience, understanding collective bargaining, is going to advance that with the goal ultimately to protect the student athlete and their families, but also the institutions, the universities and the colleges. Let's not forget them. Everybody needs to be protected. And there's so much negative energy out there, whether it's on collective bargaining or the CSC or whomever. Stop it. Bob Newhart has this great skit he does. It's just called Stop It. 2 words, stop it. Stop it. Let's sit down. Let's exude some passion and positive energy and get these deals done. There's so much excitement in college sports with men and women, Division One, Two, Three, NII, you name it. Let's get excited about what we can do for these student athletes because most of them aren't going to pros. This is the end of the line, and let's help them be as successful, not just financially, but after college and whatever career path they choose.
And the other thing that I think you and I are also inspired by are the athletes who are doing things with their NIL not making money. Think about all these athletes who have donated to hospitals, to charities, to nonprofits, to raising money for cancer, raising money for, Christmas programs. I mean, there are so many things out there that athletes have done that have really helped grow the personal brand, right? Like that's what you're talking about is what are you doing with your personal brand for life after sports? And that's why I've always said Pliable's going to support athletes for life. This is more than just about a college athlete for a very short period of time. This is about what a college athlete can do to leverage their name, image, and likeness, and then go get a job in the real world or go get that pro sports career that they may desire because 98% of athletes aren't going pro.
That is correct. And I love that. I love what name, image, and likeness can do for the student athlete beyond their playing days. And a perfect example is a book called The Magic Cleats, which I happen to have, and definitely inspirational. These two young ladies who are working through informing people about cancer awareness and what they're doing, and I just love how they're promoting and advocating for who they are and what their goals are to ensure that they're bringing cancer awareness throughout the world. And I just think that's a great inspiration. It's called the Magic Cleat, and I would ask anyone to take a look at that. It's Emma Eubank and Hannah Dukeman, and they're both tremendous athletes in their own right. But what they're doing off the field to bring awareness to cancer, that's what name, image, and likeness and NIL is about. And I love when people use that platform to further what they're passionate about in their heart.
It's a great story too. Obviously, the book written by myself and my daughter, and Emma now at Vanderbilt University getting her PhD in cancer research. I mean, that's just a great example of what these athletes want to do, and kind of a related story to that, Johnny. It's amazing how it's contagious. So I also work with an athlete, Abby Turnpaugh from Manhattan University, who literally has that book because Hannah and Emma came before her, and they were pliable athletes, and they still are because I support them for life. And I tell every athlete that I meet with, whether they sign on with Pliable or not, I tell them that story because I'm trying to recruit people that are similar in character to those two because I look at them as the pedestal. Those are two of the most amazing people I've ever met in my life. And now Abby Turnpaugh wants to do the same thing. She has seen what they did, and she's come to me and said, how can I get more involved in cancer research? And I've got another athlete, Maddie Brown, wants to give back to Minnesota Children's Hospitals. And the list goes on and on. And this is stuff where athletes are donating funds from their name, image, and likeness, which I think is so cool. And I think, too, Johnny, as we kind of talk about relationships, it's so important to give back to your community.
That is the key. It's not just the monetization you get from playing sports. It's how do you pay it forward? How do you give it back? How do you recognize not just your community, but the sport itself? And there's so many athletes that are taking NIL and doing that, and that excites me. Student athletes who are very interested in doing that and taking what they're doing on the field, on the court, in the arena, and leveraging that off the field and
Yeah.
utilizing their brand and their name. But more importantly, what I like is their passion that's in their heart. And that to me speaks volumes about how important it is that we're working with our student athletes, being advocates for them, and ensuring they have all the tools and resources they need, that they're educated about what NIL is. A lot of colleges now are required to provide that
Yep.
education. Some
Yep.
are doing it and some aren't. We want to
Yeah.
make sure that they know there's tax implications when you get revenue from revenue sharing or NIL deals. There's tax implications, and you got to understand each state has a different level. Some states have no income tax, others have a flat rate, and
Yeah.
others, like this great state of California, it's 13.3%, which is the highest of any of the 50 states. So you have to understand that, and then you got to understand the contract. A deal, as a contract negotiator, a deal's a deal. When you execute and sign it, we have an agreement, and we have to make sure the athletes know you got to read. Remember, you got to read to learn and understand, and that's really important. But we have to help guide them as they. I mean, I don't know about you, Greg, but at 18, 19 years old, I didn't know anything about a contract. Are you kidding me? I was just trying to get to my classes on time.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think speaking of classes, a great opportunity to talk about the importance of education in this space. Definitely need more of it. That's why I'm proud to be the professor for the NIL course for sports management worldwide. And I want to also give out the promotional code for those of you who are listening to this episode because you are invested. You've obviously come to listen to this episode and you want to do more probably in this NIL space. You maybe want to learn more about the NIL space. And you can use the promo code Pliable100 and get you $100 off a course. So I encourage you to do that so that you can then get educated yourself. And if we can pay that forward, that's what we want to do here. So I wanted to be sure to mention that. Now, Johnny, you've taken the course. You've done all these things. You've built your network. You are in this world every day. What is the next step for you? What are you looking to do here, Endgame?
Just one thought on the sports management worldwide in the course. It was a great course. My interest really in NIL started back in 2015 when Ed O'Bannon, as a UCLA alum, filed his case, and it really changed my thinking about what that looked like and really got me interested as a baseball umpire, football referee, and coach. But a shout out to Dr. Glynn Lashbrook. Here's a guy who runs an organization every Sunday, and I mean every Sunday. He's on the phone with people. If you want to do a Zoom, he has a Zoom every Sunday morning. Every Sunday. I don't care if it's Christmas. He's on the phone. It's amazing. I've never worked affiliated with a CEO that's done that, and I've worked with a lot of great ones. So to me, I think that's really significant to point out. For me, my dream job. In fact, I wrote a job description for it. It's called Manager of Athlete Relations, either at a university, a college, a conference, or the NCAA. And I've seen jobs out there for Director of Student Athlete Services, Director of Compliance, all great. But my dream job and my kind of focus is that support of the student athlete and being a manager of athlete relations. And that's really where I'd like to go, to be helpful to student athletes, their families, the universities, get engaged in the collective bargaining discussion, helping others develop what that ultimately may or may not look like, but really supporting student athletes in understanding of contracts, the financial implications, and making sure they're properly educated on the rules and regulations of NIL, because they adjust, modify, and change on a daily, if not hourly basis. And I think the College Sports Commission is doing a great job trying to keep people informed. Again, everybody wants to criticize. Criticism's easy. It's easy to lob a bomb and lob negative talk. Much more difficult to be positive because you got to think about it. You better be proactive, and you got to put some forethought into being positive. A lot of positives they're doing, getting things turned around quickly, and working on behalf of the student athletes and their families.
Absolutely. And I also want to give you a big shout out for some of the informational interviews that you have done, because as part of the course, it's a requirement to do two informational interviews. Do you know how many Johnnie Perkins has done? Johnny, why don't you tell him?
Well, I have done now close to, if maybe not over, I haven't counted lately, but I'm pretty close to 100.
Yeah, that's
And I
incredible.
continue to do them now. I think every conversation I have with someone, whether it's a conference commissioner, a head coach, athletic director, director of compliance, and I've talked to all four of those.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm talking to head coaches, conference commissioners. Every one of those to me is an informational interview because I'm trying to glean from them, from their experience and expertise. What can I do to better be able to be in a position to serve student athletes and their families in this new golden era of college sports, as I believe it is, which is NIL.
Yep, absolutely. Spoken from the man from California himself. So, awesome. Well, I really appreciate you hopping on. I know you're a busy guy, and you are definitely an influencer in this NIL space with the amount of knowledge you have and the amount of contact you have. So, really enjoyed our conversation here today. Johnny, how can people get in touch with you? What's the best way to do that?
They can email me at jperk0307@gmail.com. You can also go to my website, johnnyperkins.com, and leave me a message there, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. And I'm going to throw this out, my cell phone. Call me, text me, 619-385-0474. Not afraid to put out my cell phone because that's one of the other ways we can communicate. So call me, text me, and I'd love to schedule time just to pick your brain, get some thoughts, and learn as much as I can about name, image, and likeness.
Awesome. Well, Johnny, it's been a pleasure as always, and that's going to do it for another edition here of the Athlete Brand Advisor Podcast. I'm Greg Glynn. We're glad you could tune in, and have a great day, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Athlete Brand Advisor Podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes from today's episode and catch up on recent episodes at pliablemarketing.com. Be sure to follow at Pliable MKTG on social media to follow athletes who have NIL representation and work with Pliable. Have an idea for our podcast? We encourage you to share topics and guest ideas by emailing our production staff at info@pliablemarketing.com. We love hearing from our loyal listeners, so jump in and be part of the podcast because, well, that's how we roll.